Namaste. Archana for me here again. Today we are going to be talking about how to free the mind. I know the previous section was all about understanding that the mind is conditioned or seasoned to always be in the suffering mode or always associate with labels. Now we are going to be talking about how do you free the mind from the bounds of all these labels, all these sufferings, and so forth. So today we are going to be talking about another scripture called as the Yoga Sutras. Now this forms the Bible for Raja Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Patanjali Yoga. Now, sutra itself means a thread which consists of some information. So these are small verses which are generally passed down from a guru to shishya or from a teacher to his or her disciples. Um, the reason these are generally transferred from a teacher to disciples is so that they can elaborate more on them because they're very small scriptures. Now, this Yoga Sutras is having 196, I think, if I got that right. Sorry, 196 sutras, and then there are four chapters. I don't remember the Sanskrit terms and everything properly, so I just have a small zine which talks about them, which I will refer when I speak. But there are four chapters, and each of these chapters is sectioned in such a way that it helps you finally discover how to free the mind. The first one is called as the Samadhi Pada, which is nothing but contemplation. It talks about what we call as Chitta, which is the mind, how it functions, what are the things, the obstacles, the things that it goes through, and everything, and what practices are there to start preparing itself to be liberated, right? And then comes Sadhana Pada, which talks about the Bahiranga or the five steps of the Ashtanga, eight things that yoga really expects us to do to free the mind, is the physical aspects of uh, your body in terms of restraints and everything, which I will talk about again. I'm not going to go into it deep depth right away. And the third part is known as the Vibhuti Pada, which is about transcending from the physical body into the conscious state of mind, which involves meditation and stuff like that, so that finally you achieve the Kaivalya or the freedom or the liberation. Now, the beautiful thing about the sutra is first it explains how you do it with simple terms without even having to actually practice anything that like yoga asanas or anything as such. So we can talk about the first one aspect right now. The first line or the first sutra is called Yoga Anusasanam, um, which essentially means that these sutras are complete. They say they are a complete collection of things that you need to know to practice yoga and to use yoga to achieve that kaivalyam or the liberation. And the second sutra that is the most important one that I'm going to talk about. Don't worry, I'm not talking about all the 196. The second one is called Yog Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Now, chitta is what they are referring to the mind, and vritti is nothing but modifications to the mind. And I already talked about the modifications, right? You associate it with, any labels, and because of that, you're always inflicting pain to yourself. If somebody is telling you that, hey, you're not doing right, you're not earning enough, and then you're processing that information, and your mind is continuously in that state, right? So these are what you call as vrittis or modifications. So your chitta is always under that pressure of those vrittis. And how do you nirodha or get rid of them is what Yoga Anusasanam is going to talk about. And when I talk about all these things in the first chapter, there is another scripture which there is another sutra that I really like, and I feel that is most important and the most easiest that you can adapt without too much of practice. But it will bring about a lot of change in your life. Is what is known as Chitta Prasadanam. So the rest of the sutras really talk about different types of pain that you experience, the different identifications of what is inflicting the pain and so forth. I'm going to leave that for you to explore. But the thing that I would want to talk about is called as Chitta Prasadanam. And this is a simple sutra, and it says that the best prasad or the best gift that you can give to your chitta or your mind is by cultivating opposite act or opposite virtues. So, what does that mean? Let's say somebody in your team You're working in a company and somebody in your team got promoted. The natural indication of the mind is to be inflicted by the pain that somebody got promoted and you did not get promoted, and be anxious about when you're going to get promoted. Why did that person get promoted? Or what am I not doing right? And so forth. You see how you're inflicting those vrittis and puzzling your mind. Rather, to be of appreciation, to say that, okay, that person did something right. They got the promotion. Let's wish them good luck. Let's, be happy about it, even for a moment, right? You will realize that you are stopping yourself from getting into that so called, in English, there's a word called feedback loop. You end up thinking that what went wrong with you? Why is this happening to others? Why is this always happening to me? And everything that you switch that gear into an opposite gear of appreciation, and you will see that your feedback loop may not be that bad. You would probably find it a little bit more easier to assess and understand what potentially you could do better to get to that state, rather than fixating on the thought that you did not get the promotion. So I think Chitta Prasadanam is very important sutra that I feel that helps you start off on this journey on finding peace and bringing those vrittis down in your mental processing and your consciousness and so forth. And trust me, it is a little bit difficult in the beginning. It's not easy when you're driving, somebody cuts you off and you're like, hey, what the hell are you doing? To, okay, buddy, just go. It's not easy, but even if you're able to cultivate that opposite virtue at any point in time, let's say out of 10 times something erupts you in a day, if you're able to control it 8 times, you will find yourself more at ease and peace than erupting all the 8 or all the 10 times. And that is what is called as the difference between reaction and response. Don't just respond, but respond with the opposite virtue. So that is the first part of the Yoga Sutras that I want to talk about. And then talking about the second chapter and the third chapter, which is nothing but the Sadhana Pada and the Kaivalya Pada. So Vibhuti Pada. I'm a little bad with remembering those names. I apologize. Uh, there are 8 limbs that these sutras explain, and a lot of other styles of yoga either adapt all the 8, or they mix them into 5, they mix them into more combinations, and they always stick to these. So the 8 are referred to as yamas, niyamas, asanas, pranayama, pratyahara, and these are the bahiranga, the outer angas, and the anga is that dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Now, what are each one of these, right? This is an 8 step process that you do, you practice to really achieve kaivalya. The first one is called as yamas and niyamas. Now, these are again soft in the world of work and what you learn today in colleges and everything. These are like the soft skills, not the technical skills of, uh, you know, practices. Okay, so yamas and niyamas. Yamas means restraints, and niyamas means observances. So, what does restraints mean? Like restraining meaning, one of the beautiful thing that I like is, I know they say ahimsa, satya, and brahmacharya and all of that. But the one that I really like the most is aparigraha, which is non-hoarding, is not holding on to too much resources for yourself, buying a lot of things or building too many things or keeping everything for yourself and not sharing it with others is one of those restraints. And of course, there is other sets of restraints that you need to practice. And then comes observances. And again, one of the things that I really like is self study. I think that is called swadhyaya. And of course, santosha, contentment. So you generally try to be happy with what you have. It's okay to desire certain things, but do not fixate on the desire and forget what is there in front of you. What these yamas and niyamas generally mean. And of course, you can read more about them and leave a link for you to read uh, from any other article that is available, or the book that you can actually read more in detail. So this was the soft skills part of it. And then comes the actual physical part of it, which is asanas, which is what the yoga poses that you do, the Surya Namaskars that you do. All of that is what is called as asanas, or what we literally translate into poses. Now, that is again physical. Now, slowly we transcend from the physical body to the subtle energy body through the other sets of steps, which is pranayama. Now, pranayama is nothing but the breath, which actually controls the energy flow through entire body. And without your breath, you know you're not alive. So pranayama is just expansion of your breath so that you are able to function even better. You're nourishing every single cell, tissue, muscle, everything in your body as you breathe in, as you take in more oxygen, and your heart pumps out that to everything else in your body. So that's pranayama. The next one is way too critical, even if you're not practicing any of these things, is pratyahara. Now, Pratyahara, again tying back to the first concept that I talked about, is Prakriti presenting itself to us to experience, and we, as the primal consciousness, which is experiencing the whole thing. Pratyahara is to find that point where you are no longer governed by your senses, or you're no longer drawn and attracted or overly worked up over those things. It's called as withdrawal of your senses. Now people go to extreme extents of fasting, closing their eyes and things like that to do practice that withdrawal of senses. But you can always do take small steps, as in you see something, you're like, looks good. Don't immediately go into the process of where is it, how do I get it, which is what I do a lot, and I'm really struggling to find a semblance in withdrawing from most critical senses are one, eating, and the other one is seeing. You see something, you find it so beautiful, and then you want your hands on it, and you want to have a copy of it, or you want to buy it for yourself, or to give it to somebody else. But the process of just withdrawing from that, the sense controlling you, this is letting your mind control your sense, or rather than just letting the sense do what it's doing, but sense by sense, I mean, let your sensory organs do what it is doing, but you do not process it to the extreme extent as possible. So that is pratyahara, and there are a lot of techniques again for that. And talking about the final step, which is once you're able to control your senses, then comes, dhyana. Sorry, before dhyana, dharana, which is again concentration. So there is a beautiful technique which I don't know if you've heard of it. Is called as the pink elephant. So when you are asked to close your eyes and concentrate on either an object in front of you, sometimes they even use candle light, the wick for you to concentrate on, the flame to concentrate on, so that you're concentrating only on that. And concentrating on one point or one subject lets you let go of other things that are happening in your mind and focus on that. So you first practice concentration, then you shift to meditation, just dhyana. So once you do all of this, you're almost towards the final step, which is kaivalya or samadhi, which is complete liberation from all of these frictions, that vrittis that the chitta or the mind experiences. So that is a beautiful concept that I would leave in terms of freeing the mind. And if you ask me if I have followed everything to the T, no, but I at least choose one out of each and I practice that. So in terms of yamas and niyamas, like I mentioned, I try to I try to practice it at least, like I said, out of 10 times that you get tempted or 10 times that you get disturbed, at least 8 or 7 or 5 times I'm able to keep myself in check. And asana practice is, of course, what pretty much everybody does. And then, of course, pranayama. Even if you're not going to sit in padmasana and sit and control and breathe and do bastika, whatever, any of those forms of pranayama, even if you sit normally on your chair, keep your shoulders open and your chest open and you breathe in and breathe out, that itself is a basic form of pranayama that you can do. And of course, pratyahara, controlling or withdrawal of senses. The first step to that is again not complete withdrawal, but at least the awareness that you need, or hey, you're being controlled by the sense, and that you're not using your intelligence to ward off that temptation or ward off that belief that, that is the most beautiful thing, that is the one that you need to have as an example. And finally, concentration and of course, meditation. Now, this is a beautiful way of explaining how you free the mind, and that is why I have included this in my Disavoyant section. So let me know how you felt this meaningful, and of course you can always read, but I would highly recommend taking up teacher training or a proper professional yoga training, which helps you discover these aspects that you can inculcate, not just the asana aspect. Because you're not going to achieve anything by just doing asana, it just then becomes a physical form of exercise. But without understanding all these concepts around the yoga, you're literally not going to get anything out of it. So, on that note, namaste. Have a beautiful day ahead.